So, the Rotherham story. I've seen a few faces in this room today of people who were in and around Rotherham helping sort things out there, long before I arrived as well. I've been here in Rotherham, for 3 years. I'm Head of Democratic Services. I do pretty much the same job as Carl, except it's got far more resources, far more budget, and a far more risk-averse sort of outset or mindset amongst his senior leadership. So I look on enviously at this place, and this is great. So I'll get on with the Rotherham story, and I've been trying to work out how I play this because there's an awful lot of car crash. I'm talking into the mic, it's right in front of my mouth. I can't get any nearer to it. Do you want me to shout like that? Oh my God. I was never in a band, you see, that's why. So, this is weird. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, Rotherham. So, Rotherham, Dave, let's go to the first slide, because let's start off with the car crash. So, when I talk about car crash, that makes it sound very light-hearted, and it wasn't. This is an incredibly powerful story of what happened in Rotherham. August 2014 is when everything started to unravel. And it unravelled with the publication of a report by Alexis J into child sexual exploitation. 1,400, an estimated 1,400 at least, young girls in the town and in the borough were exploited. And Alexis J found that all of the public services in the borough failed them. So just think about what that means in terms of local democracy, confidence in your elected representatives, confidence in the services that are provided. So that was in August 2014. This wasn't just local news, it was national news, it was international news. When you think of Rotherham now, it's been quite interesting talking to somebody today, when I talked about what I'm going to talk about, what happened at Rotherham. That's quite good because the narrative's sort of moved on a bit if people like you aren't thinking of this. But you talk to most people, when they think of Rotherham, they think of the front page of the Times, Alexis J, that figure of 1,400 keeps playing back and playing back. And the important thing about this is that whatever we do, and the story I'm going to tell about how the council's turned itself around and how we've moved on, these people might not move on. A lot of them have, and a lot of them are in a good place, but there are some who will never do that. They will be living with this for the rest of their lives because of the failings of public services in Rotherham and people like councillors and officers, people like me, and that reminds you as a public servant of the importance of the work we do. So we can't forget that. So again, that was August. Less than 6 months later, everyone's favourite civil servant at the time, Louise Casey, came in to the corporate governance inspection of the council. So it wasn't just children's services that went wrong at Rotherham. She did an inspection and said the council was not fit for purpose. And you talk to people who were there at the time. The place was in freefall between August, when the leader, or then leader, Roger Stone, resigned, and at that point. So we're coming up to 4 years on from the publication of Louise Casey's report. I upset the leader yesterday afternoon by going into his office to tell him that he has to be re-elected under the provisions of the Local Government and Public Involvement in Health Act because his 4-year term runs out. So that's how we know we're 4 years on. For those of you who aren't geeks around governance like me, that won't have any resonance whatsoever. I love it. But, yeah, the man in the corner's loving it, so you're getting a big tick there. So again, Rotherham was on the front page of local and national newspapers for all the wrong reasons. There was this point that Eric Pickles, we all love Eric, sent in the commissioners. And the commissioners came in with basically a mission to turn the place around, to re-establish a functioning local democracy, which is a bit bizarre given that all democratic powers were removed from the council, with the exception of planning. We still do planning. And on the day it happened, and I talked to people who were there, I wasn't in Rotherham at that point in time, councillors were making decisions at the time that Eric Pickles made his statement to the House of Commons. They were making decisions on licensing matters. The point at which he made that statement to the House of Commons, they no longer had the power to make those decisions. So there were 4 cases where they made a decision and it had to be done again with commissioners coming in a few days later. Everything stopped. So everything that we are celebrating here today about local democracy, that stopped in Rotherham. We continue to have councillors, and there was a cabinet, but they didn't have any powers. So, for those of you who are into local government, local decision making. Actually, that's a massive, this was the biggest intervention in a local authority in English local history. So if we move on then to some of Louise Casey's comments, and this is, these quotes here really get to the nub of the issue. There was no challenge. There wasn't a challenge from the Cabinet, there wasn't a challenge from scrutiny. They didn't understand what challenge meant. The culture in the organisation was wrong, and I'll talk a little bit more about culture shortly. But you can see in that final quote, more generally members blame officers for failure to progress and officers blame members for lack of leadership. No one was taking responsibility. That's how it all happened, that's how it all went wrong. So, if we move on from there, how do we start putting it right? And when I say we, I wasn't there, I didn't put it right. I come in a much later point. But at the point the commissioners arrived, they started looking at, how do we sort governance out? Rotherham already had this leader and cabinet model of decision making. So power concentrating in the hands of no more than 10 elected representatives. They went out and talked to other authorities. So they talked to Oldham, Hartlepool, Leicester, looked at elected mayors, committee systems. They came to the conclusion that they wanted to retain the leader and cabinet model, which I think is a brave call given the scale of what happened. And they kept it because they wanted to change the way that scrutiny works and change the culture of the organisation. I'll talk a bit about values and behaviours that's driven some of this shortly. So we now have pre-decision scrutiny, which, when I arrived there, I was like, oh, this is brilliant, pre-decision scrutiny, it's going to change the world. It hasn't. It's just another tool to enable us to actually provide a bit of challenge, add a bit of value to proposals before they go forward for the decision making. But the point is that more people are involved in it. It's worked well, members like it. I question, whether it's working as effectively as we want to now, because we've moved on. Things have moved on, and I'll get on to where we are now shortly. We need more increased consultation, engagement with the opposition. There never was an opposition in Rotherham. And think about what happened in Rotherham. I just described all those events. In 2016, there was an all-out election. The Labour Party was returned still with 3/4 of the members of the council, despite everything that had happened. We've now got 25% of the council as opposition, and you wouldn't know the difference between, I was saying this to someone earlier, you wouldn't know the difference between opposition members and Labour members most of the time. The only time you know that there is any sort of opposition is in council, where they have to perform, they've got to show a bit of disagreement to appeal to their various constituents. But it works a lot better than it did. And then we've got my colleague Martin Hughes, I'm not going to pull out or name here, but he's looking really bored in the corner. We've looked at the role of ward councillors in neighbourhoods, because this is another critical thing, connecting councillors to communities, back to the council. We've not been great at it. It was one of the reasons things fell down at Rotherham. We're on a journey on that one still, and Martin's come in to lead up our new approach to neighbourhoods. But this is going to be critical to reigniting that sense of civic pride in the borough that perhaps is missing. And we've had a boundary review. So all the old boundaries have gone. We've had new councillors come in 2016. We had an all-out election. We've got another all-out election next year. Important point there around the all-out election. A lot of institutional knowledge went when all the senior officers left the organisation. It also happened in 2016 when all the members left, because more than half the council changed between 2015 and 2016. So in terms of the challenge of getting members up to speed to understand what their responsibilities are, that's a phenomenal amount of shift to actually to work through. Okay, so Dave's telling me I've got 1 minute left. The red book's gone up. So what have we done? We have more engagement at council. We have public questions. We've changed our petition scheme. Those of you who keep a close eye on events in Rotherham will know that we discussed Chuckle Square as a tribute to the Chuckle Brothers the other day, and we controversially said no, even though the meeting started with the chair saying from me to you when I gave the apologies. We now have neighbourhood reports into council, so we're not only just talking about what we're doing to show that things are happening in neighbourhoods. Actually what we're doing is getting the bar raised in council, so members are seeing what other members are doing. They're putting the challenge down to themselves. Performance has been reviewed. We're constantly challenging each other. Partnership arrangements which weren't working under the old leadership have been re-established. We're in a far better place than we were. I could talk about the cross-party review of the Constitution, but it's really dry, and I don't sense you're the right audience for that, so we'll move on there. So performance, we didn't do performance particularly well. I told you this was going to be challenging. I normally do this in an hour. We've got 7 minutes, for God's sake. So, performance. Right that it gets challenged. We weren't challenging enough. So scrutiny now constantly provides challenge on performance and budgets. We've still got all the same challenges that every normal council has got. We don't have enough money to fund social care for children or adults, and that, you know, we encounter the same performance issues that any other organisation does. But the key thing that's different is scrutiny members are all over it. The cabinet are open to challenge. Members and senior officers are being presented challenge. So if we move on, Dave. Yeah, we'll move on, Dave. Values and behaviours, this is the really important stuff, because this is how you change an organisation, isn't it? Everyone talks about cultural change in an organisation. You can't change the culture of an organisation just like that. You have to change the way that we think and all the things that we do. Here, Case is talking about bullying, sexism, suppression, misplaced political correctness. I can tell you that things have changed at Rotherham. I wasn't there when those criticisms were levelled at the place, but it's a very different organisation. The leadership we've got, both from the leader, the cabinet, senior members who are in scrutiny, and the leadership we get from our chief executive and strategic directors, we're in a very different place. It's a very open and honest organisation. People can go and have difficult conversations and are encouraged to do so. And there are our values and behaviours. So we're honest, accountable, respectful, ambitious and proud. These are the things that, you know, when we talk about 21st century public servant, 21st century councillor, it feeds into this. Our members generally, you know, work to this. They're not required to. We have different provisions in our code of conduct, but they know that they're in a different place from where they were before. You know, the conversation's moved on. They're being held to a much higher standard perhaps than councillors are in many other places because of the events of recent years. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour. I can talk forever about this, so if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I might be in the pub shortly to recover. And, you know, if anyone does want to talk seriously, come grab me. But this is what happened here. We're in a different place. We had an inspection last week. We're waiting for the official report back on it, but we are due to leave intervention in six weeks' time. We're normal. We've been normal for about 2 years, in my view. We've been asked to be told you're normal. Yeah. So that's Rotherham. Thank you.